So, yeah, my name is Scott, and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist in Claremont. It's about 40 minutes up the road. And I've been doing that for about 12 years. I'm a Southern California guy, born and raised here. And from a pretty early age, I was always interested in metaphysics and spirituality. And I was lucky enough that my grandmother taught me how to read when I was pretty young, like around 4. So I got a jump on school and everything. And, I just became a reading fool after that. Just read everything I could read. I loved history. Being a little kid, you love dinosaurs and that kind of thing, right? Little boy. And I was always just interested in the past. Dinosaurs and archaeology and ancient cultures and ancient civilizations. And so, that was always a keen interest of mine. As I became older, I became more interested in metaphysics and spirituality. What's beyond this three-dimensional reality? I always had a feeling for other places and other times. I mean, I was probably too young to understand about reincarnation yet, but I always had a feeling for that. So, life takes us on lots of roller coasters and lots of journeys. I did lots of things. At a certain point in my life, I decided I wanted to learn how to... I was always interested in past life regression, past lives and this kind of thing. Like I say, my history. And also, I felt that I'd lived in other times and other places. I felt there was a lot more to this than what meets the eye. So, at a certain point in my life, I said, I want to learn about past life regression and how to do this, and I want to experience it myself as well. So I went to hypnosis school not too far from here in Anaheim. My teacher was a lady named Dr. Jean. She passed away a few years back, but she was an older woman, and she pretty much knew everyone who was anyone in the hypnosis world. So she gave me a really great foundation in hypnosis, from the old master stuff from the 50s and 60s to even the cutting edge stuff. And so, yeah, come on in and have a seat. You're welcome. So, yeah, I started practicing hypnotherapy, and I studied past life regression with a guy named Dick Sutphin. Guy who wrote some really cool books in the 70s that I had read when I was a teenager. So I got to study with him. That was really fun. So I began practicing, focusing on spiritual things such as past life regression. And then a couple years into my practice, I heard that Michael Newton was training people in this thing called Life Between Lives. And I had read his book maybe in the mid-90s. I was in the library studying. I'd be haunting the bookshelves, near the astrology and all that kind of stuff, occult and all that. So I found his book, and I read that book, and I was pretty blown away. I mean, I've read a lot of metaphysical books, but that one was pretty different. It went beyond what I had read and what I had known. So I found out on the internet that he was going to be giving a training in hypnotherapy in this Life Between Lives process. And it just happened to be in Studio City. They do it all over the country, but it just happened to be that year in Studio City. And a couple months, I had a couple months to decide if I could do it. It cost a certain amount of money, and things were a little tight at that time. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I have a friend named Lonnie that she was really into Michael Newton's book. She called it the book, as if it was the Bible. His book about life between lives, the book Journey of Souls in particular. She always called it the book. So I said, I was eating at a Mexican restaurant by myself, and I was trying to decide, am I gonna spend this money to do this thing? It's about all the money I had, and I called her up, and she said, "Yeah, you gotta do it. You gotta do it." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I go back, and I'm eating my food, and I I bit on a really hard tortilla chip, and I cracked my tooth. And I'm like, oh man! And I'm like, this is going to cost like $600. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can spend the money to do this training thing because I'm going to have to fix this. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It doesn't hurt that much. No, it's not really hurting that much. I'm going to go for it. So that was a good decision. Maybe that was a little test that the universe gave me. Suck it up and take a little pain and damage so you can learn something good. So anyway, I went to that training, and my life really changed after that, during that, and after that. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about the life between lives hypnotic process. And then later we're going to do a little guided meditation that will take you into a past life. And then through the past life death, up into spirit, between this life and whatever life you access, up into what we call the spirit realm, or the spirit world. And perhaps we can meet with your spirit guides. We get a message from your spirit guides. And this might be a good opportunity to make sure your cell phones are off.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, whoever that was.
Completely forgot.
So life between lives is a very deep hypnotic process that takes you into the life between our lifetimes, between our earthly incarnations. As spirits, we live a long, long, long time, if not forever. Who knows when we were created? I mean, eons ago, or maybe we've always been here. I don't know. It's hard to say, but this life, I mean, everyone has their own feelings and opinions. But for me, I mean, this life, it can't be all there is. There's just so much more. Anyway, so this life between lives process, it takes you into that. So there's kind of a long process. It can last 3 to 4 hours, sometimes maybe longer. I had one the other day. It was about 5 hours. So it's a very deep and long process. And so basically it starts with a client will come in. Yes, sir.
It's a hypnotic process or a meditative process?
Well, I mean, those are sort of two sides of this similar coin there. But yeah, I would call it hypnotic. Yeah, very deep hypnotic. But I mean, hypnosis and meditation, there's not too much difference between them. Hypnosis, in hypnotherapy, it might be a little more active, whereas meditation might be a little more passive. That would be my definition, but they're very similar in my opinion. So yeah, I just have a little office there in Claremont, and I usually work one-on-one. So this is really exciting for me to be with all of you today. I'm not a professional speaker, as you have already noticed. I usually work one-on-one, but so I'll talk with the client, what are you looking for in this session? What is it that you want to find out? And I'll have them bring in a list of personal questions. Why did I meet Joe and marry him? Why did I get hit by a car when I was 11? Am I on the right path? What's my next move? These types of things. Because in the session we can usually receive direct spiritual guidance from spirit guides, higher beings that we call a council of elders. Whatever wise and loving beings that we encounter in these sessions, we can direct these questions to those beings, and the answers come through the client, through their own mouth, through their own voice. It's very cool, almost as if channeling this higher wisdom. So it's very exciting. So I'll talk to the client and find out what they're looking for. I'll talk to them a bit about hypnosis and how that works, and talk about the regression process. I'll talk about that a little bit with you today if we have time, just to give you a few points to help you get the most out of our experience today. And by the way, if there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand and interrupt at any time. It's okay. So let me look at my notes here. So basically, like, it's sort of like modern day shamans. We're taking people on this journey up into spirit. But instead of like a shaman taking the journey for you and then reporting back to you, we're guiding you on your own journey. So again, we'll talk to the client, we'll give them tips about our process, and then we'll get started. We'll light some candles, turn the lights out, put on some nice music, and start the hypnosis. We start with the hypnotic induction, just to induce hypnosis, and we work through that, getting deeper and deeper into a different state of awareness. And then as I determine that they're ready to move forward, or to move backward rather, we have a pretty good framework that Dr. Newton developed. So we use this framework. We'll go backwards through childhood. We'll do some sort of age regression. Go back through childhood. Stop at a few points in childhood, kind of as a memory warm-up, and looking really only at happy or pleasant or neutral scenes or situations. We're not really looking at doing therapy at that point. We're just kind of doing some memory warm-ups. So we'll do that. We'll go back in time, and then we'll regress them all the way back into the womb, to the time before they're born. There's some really interesting information to be found in the womb, such as when did your soul energy actually enter this fetus? And I don't want to get into an abortion controversy or anything like that, but we get some pretty interesting answers. I'd say an average month of gestation that the soul energy actually comes into the fetus is about the 3rd month. But sometimes we seem to move in and out. Our soul will come and check out the baby to see how it's developing, saying, yeah, wow, this is who I'm going to be. Sometimes that soul energy can actually make modifications to that child by using, I guess, telepathy or energy, doing energy healing, even working with the mother, because sometimes maybe the mother is worried or anxious and this kind of thing. That soul energy of that child can actually work on that mother, do energy healing, and send her love and this kind of thing to calm her down. So it's a very interesting part of the session, the womb. So then from the womb we'll go back into a past life. We'll sort of rise out of that situation and go into a past lifetime. And then we'll move through the past life. We'll find some of the milestones and some of the interesting points, and find out what was the mission of that past life, because every life has lessons, layers and layers and layers of lessons and missions and things that we're working on. Because the whole point of this thing is to grow and develop, to develop as spirits, to grow more compassion, to grow in our capacity to love, to grow in our awareness, this kind of thing. So this seems to be the reason why we take these human incarnations, to experience these things and to grow and evolve as souls. So we'll go through the past life looking at some important things, some of the relationships, this type of thing. And then at some point we'll move to the last day of the past life, and we'll go through the death, and then through the crossing over into spirit. So this is where it sort of ties into the NDE, the near-death experiences that you have been researching. In these hypnosis sessions, we can go back and remember these different ways that we cross over, these different ways. What happens when we die, basically? We can remember what we did or how that was for us. And, you know, just as with near-death experiences, there are very varied experiences, lots of different kinds of experiences. So with this past life death hypnosis thing, there's so many individual different types of experiences. But again, the same with the near-death experiences. There is a sort of a pattern that will tend to crop up. But I would say the surprising thing for me was that almost, I'd say, 80% of people who die in this past life, I ask them, how do you feel now? They're like, oh my God, I feel free, I feel wonderful. It's not like a scary thing or painful or anything like that. Once they leave the body behind, all the pain is gone, and they're just expanding, remembering their energy, remembering who they really are. And we are vast, and we are huge, and we are connected to the cosmos. So it's a wonderful point in the session to remember this. And so in the crossing over part, crossing from the human side to the spiritual side, that's sort of making that shift into the spiritual dimension. It is a shift. It's a shift of energy, a shift of consciousness, a shift of awareness. And there are many different paths and journeys that people take in this crossing over. It's very interesting. I have some people that will be like, whoosh, they just go right up. They're like, that's over. I'm done with that. I got to go meet with my buds, and we're working on this project, this incredible project. Wow, I got to get back. I can't believe I forgot about that for 80 years. So they go back to this like library or somewhere where they're working on this project with their soul buddies. And then I have other clients who, they take a long time. It may take a long time to sort of leave the earth behind. They may have to stop at a cloud for a while and chill out. And so, you know, I'll just stay with them. And sort of, I call it like way stations. Their vibration is changing, their frequency is changing. So I just have to go with them and see what happens. Then there's another class of people who, and I was in this in my first LBL session that I had. After I died, I was like, I don't really want to go anywhere. I just want to sit inside of this tree for a while, I think. I just went to some field and sat in an oak tree for like, it felt like a year. I don't know. I was just like, I just wanted to be in nature. I recently had a client that she did something very similar to that. She sat in a tree for a while. She was like one with the tree, and then she flew with some birds, and she went inside the birds, and you know, she did that for a while, and I'm like, geez. I'm like, what's she gonna do next? Run with the wolves? Become a badger? I gotta move this along. I mean, she could have took all day. She could have took all day. She must love nature quite a bit. But yeah, so it's very fun. So I had to move her along, and I had to skip forward because, you know, we only have so much energy in a session. So let's skip forward to the time when we're...
Exactly that voice.
Yeah, exactly that voice. I have some brief excerpts from clients illustrating some of these sort of station stops that we go through in this LBL session. So here's a guy crossing over. This guy was in a war. I'm just above the battlefield. A bullet went through my eye. I'm a mess. But I'm relieved. I've seen too much death and suffering. I'm glad that life was over. I'm moving now, like being sucked through a straw. I'm moving too fast to see, but space gets lighter, gray turns into light, brighter and brighter. It's home. So that was his pretty quick shift from human life to spiritual life. So what happens once we get into that spiritual dimension? What happens there? Well, there's again a whole variety of experiences we have. A pretty common experience is to be met by some personage, some energy, whether it's a spirit guide, whether it's a loved one who has preceded you in death, whether it's sometimes there are sort of messengers or escorts, you might call them. Nobody's special to you, just like I'm sent to hold your hand and bring you to where you need to go. So it's up to me. I need to determine what the relationship of these beings are to my client. So we'll talk to them. And it's pretty often that you will be met by your spirit guide, because when you cross over, you may want a bit of orientation. Sometimes people are a little bit lost or still thinking about their lifetime, this kind of thing. So someone usually comes to meet you and takes you by the hand and say, "Hey buddy, I'll take you home." And so meeting your spirit guide is probably one of the most profound experiences you can have in this kind of session. Making that contact with that personal spirit guide. We all have spirit guides. At least one main guide, one primary guide who is sort of assigned to us to watch us and to teach us and to guide us for eons and eons. There may come a time when, as we outgrow teachers here on earth, there may be a time when guides pass us on to the next guide. I've had a few clients that say, well, this is my guide, but I'm moving on to a new guide now. But basically, we are met by our primary spirit guides. And they may be flanked with other guides, depending on who we are and what we're working on as a soul. We have lots of interests, and some of the other guides might be, say, someone who was an artist, because you have an artistic side, or someone who was a scientist because of your scientific side, these kinds of interests. So we'll be flanked by those other guides. But a very common occurrence is to be taken by our primary spirit guide and to be sat down on a bench and say, "Okay, buddy, let's talk about that life that you just left." So here's an excerpt from someone talking about meeting their guide. "I have a spiritual guide. He is here. He dresses in robes of green silk, has a long beard, white hair. He is kind, compassionate, wise, old, very, very old. He's pleased with what took place in my last life. If you develop one or two qualities in each lifetime, strengthen them, you've accomplished a lot." And so our guide will talk to us about what we've just been through, sort of debrief us about that life. How do you feel you did in that life? Well, I think I did the best I could. I guess I could have done a little better. They'll say, we're proud of you. We're proud of what you did. Everyone in this room, you are the brave ones. You are the courageous ones. There are spirits who choose never to incarnate, because this world is intense. In case you haven't noticed, it can be a very intense place. I had a session the other day, and the guide was talking about this world and said, it's a place of conflict. I mean, you want a peaceful life, but you've come into this place of conflict and chaos. I mean, I guess you could go hole up as a hermit in a mountain somewhere, but still there's going to be, your body's going to have needs, and it's not a place to rest. It's a place to work and to learn and experience and grow. So, I salute each and every one of you for being here today and all of your lives. You are the brave. You are the courageous ones. So the guide will talk to us about these kinds of things, and then sometimes with those questions that the person brings in, I'll address those to the guide, and the guide will be happy to answer those questions. So then I'll ask the guide. Being a guide, he can help guide my session too, so I'll converse with him through my client. I'll set up a deal where I say, let me talk to your guide directly. Your guide can answer in your mind or even through your voice as if channeling your guide. It kind of cuts out the middleman. The person doesn't have to think so much. So we'll talk to the guide. We'll have the guide kind of direct the session. It's very cool. So I'll ask, Okay, where do you think she needs to go next? Well, she needs some healing. She's been through a lot. So there are places of restoration and healing in the spirit world in between our lives. And we deserve a rest after going through this. It's tough. So these places of restoration and healing can take many, many forms. As many forms as, we are individual. A common scenario is a chamber, a healing chamber with light, sort of light energy shining on them. They'll say, I'll say, how are you feeling? Like, oh my God, I'm being filled up with love energy or with light energy, this kind of thing. I'll say, well, I'm going to be quiet for a few moments, and I want you to just enjoy that, and let me know when you're done. So they'll take a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes, however long they need. And boy, you should see their faces. It's incredible, the change. Because of the nature of now, time, and spirit, while they're remembering this healing that they had, it's almost as if they're simultaneously receiving that now. And so their face changes. The color comes into their face. They get this beatific look on their face, this sacred look. Wow, it's like the years roll off their face. It's incredible. So, yeah, these healings can take many forms. I've seen people describe it as, well, I'm in a cave and there's crystals and they're shining all around me and shining this rainbow light on me. Or some people will say, I'm going into the shower and there's this shower of light and the light just cleans me, Or I'm just going into a field to lay in the daisies and soak up the sun. It can be kind of an earthy feeling to it. It's just kind of fun. Let's see if I have anything about this. Oh yeah, I do. Here's one. They said, I think I'll go to the purple light. It's rejuvenating like bliss. It destroys the heavy weight, the burden you have. It disintegrates your grief, your guilt, your insecurity, your fear, your worries. It's like taking a shower after you've rolled in the mud. So after you've rolled in the mud of earth, we get this chance to sort of clean that off and, okay, what's my next task? After the soul restoration, we're in the spirit world and we're doing these things. We've just returned from our life and we're like, okay, now what? And our guide might say, well, you want to see your friends? We have soul groups. Just like we have families on earth, we have these soul groups that we play with up there and we incarnate with here, down here, in different roles. So who is your mother today might have been your sister in a past life and your daughter in another life and maybe your enemy, depending on your mom. But maybe your enemy in a lot of lives, but now you're back together. So we have these soul groups. It could be a number of 5 or 6 souls, up to maybe a dozen, or even as many as 15 or 30 in a sort of a greater. Like this group of people, I don't know how many people are here, 30 or 40 people. Like this could be a sort of a soul group. But I would probably have these people in the front row would sort of be my tightest buds, my tightest friends, and we interact quite a bit in close relationships. We'll be relatives, we'll be cousins and sons and daughters. And then maybe this gentleman back here will be my grandpa or this kind of thing. So we'll interact with all these souls. So in the session, going to reunite with the soul group, it's very joyous. And a lot of tears, I'll see a lot of tears. I'm going to whip out the tissues for that. It's like, oh my God, haven't seen you in so long, group hug. And this kind of thing. So it's very, very touching. It's a very, very touching thing. And sometimes if we have the time, the inclination, we'll talk to each of those souls and we'll say, I'll bring that inner circle. Because you'll have 3 or 4 or 2 that you're really close to. And I'll say, what does this soul have to say to you today? What does he have to say about your life today? And so these souls, even though he may be incarnated as your brother, in the session, as a soul, he can still tell you, man, you just take things too seriously. You gotta lighten up. And even though as your brother, he might be more serious than you. So it's very funny. As souls, we might have different personalities than as humans. So meeting with the soul group is a beautiful thing. And then the whole question of soulmates. We usually do have a primary soulmate. Not everyone in my sessions has found or has a primary soulmate, but just about everyone does. And so meeting with that primary soulmate can be a beautiful thing as well. That primary soulmate may be your mate in this life today, or it may be that one that got away in high school, that high school love, but the plan was that you needed to go separate ways so you can learn different things, but you'll come back together again. So meeting with soul groups is a really fun thing. Let's see, I think I have a little excerpt here. We're here together. They're standing in front of me, arranged in a sort of crescent. They all communicate love. We've all been in each other's past lives. So that's a really fun part. And so there are lots of other adventures we can have in the LBL experience. I want to talk about just 2 more. There is something called the Council of Elders. We each have a council of very, very wise beings. Maybe 2 or 3 rungs above spirit guides in experience, in knowledge, in compassion, in evolution. So we'll go before this panel of wise beings. There may be three of them, 5, 7, 12. It can be a different number. I said average number would be maybe 5 or 7. And so between our lives, we actually do go to these panels because they just want to analyze you as a soul and see how you're doing. They want to see, sort of analyze your progress, take a look at you, see how you're doing. They want to see what you might need to work on next, and they'll pass that information on to your guides and things. So if we haven't asked the person's personal questions to the guide, we'll ask them in the council. And this council is a very fascinating thing. It can take many forms again. I see a lot of people going into a place like a dome, or sort of like a Greek temple, or a cathedral. It has a sacred quality. It has a sacred quality because these beings are very high. And people usually feel awestruck in standing before these beings. So it's a very cool part of the session. And those beings will also give us advice about our present life. We'll ask about the past life, and we'll ask about their whole progress in all of their lives. How are they doing? What are they really stuck on? What do they need to learn? What are their gifts as a soul? What is your biggest gift? And then a very good question to ask at the end of the council meeting is, why was Mary brought to this session today? What does she really need to get out of this? What does she need to learn? So that could be the most profound part of the whole session, or summing up what we've already talked about. Here's a quick excerpt about the council. The elders appear radiant, like an all-knowing, all-wise feeling of omnipotence. They are far beyond me. Divinity, joy, ecstasy. Their essence is love. The one in the middle is the spokesperson. One is a master healer. The others are experts in different areas of development. So on your council, as you grow as a soul and you develop more qualities and more interests, the number of council members will grow as well. Hey, he took up archery or something, so there'll be some, sporty council member or some artsy council person who's an expert. I'll teach you how to hit that target, if you just listen to me. So the council will grow and grow as you grow. It's a very fascinating part. And so one of the last, by this time we're usually it's been 3 hours or something. The person is getting fatigued, but if we can, we'll try to go to the place of life and body selection, and we'll try to go back and see, why did you choose this life? Why did you choose to become Mary in this life? So we all have these planning sessions like we already talked about, and we'll go back and visit this planning session. It can be sort of like sitting around a table in a library. talking with some of your soul group who are going to incarnate with you, and talking with some guides, and there might be some sort of library archivists going, hey, and we got this life for you. We got this life, like I said, like a car salesman. We got this one over here. You want to be in India? You want to be a poor guy in India? Or you're going to grow spiritually? You want to be a person in Southern California? You get to go surfing. Do you want to live in, be an Eskimo and have close family ties with your family? So you figure out, what do I really need? What do I want to develop in myself? And you choose. You choose your life. You each chose your life, believe it or not. I don't know what you were thinking. You chose your body and your life. You got no one to blame but yourself. Yes, sir?
Like you said, that it's like stepping into a circle and putting our foot back, and our life is just like that. How about over the other side when we're talking to communicating with the counselors or whatever else? Is it like the time we're thinking about? Like they say, there's no time on the other side, or very little. So what is that like over there in comparison to here?
Well, I'd like to explain the meaning of now time to all of you, but I can't. I don't understand it. But I'll get to you in a second. Thank you. I don't really understand it that well. But the thing is, if you want to really learn about that, I would suggest some books for you. The Seth books by Jane Roberts. He talks about, he and she talk about time being all simultaneous. Like all these lifetimes, it's not like a succession of past and then present. It's like all simultaneous, all happening at once. So what you do in your life today could somehow affect your past life. It's kind of crazy, but it's very mind-boggling for the human mind. It's very hard for the human mind to understand. But it's a great question. Yes, sir?
I remember reading in one of Dr. Newton's books that sometimes our souls choose to take sort of like vacation lives, sort of like a few kind of easy ones without learning. Like we go to planets where just beautiful and just kind of kick back and enjoy it once in a while.
Yes, it's true. We take all different sorts of lives. But even a so-called vacation life, you're going to be working on some kind of projects, some kind of lessons. There's no absolute... does anyone go through their entire life without a problem or without a challenge? Even if it's basically... Well, you might, hey, you're a young guy, you're in World War II, it's really intense, oh my God, Omaha Beach and all that kind of stuff. Oh, you saw your buddies get blown up and you get blown up. That would be pretty intense. After that, you might like to take a vacation life where you're just a postman and you kind of have a rural route somewhere and you'll be quiet. But you're still going to have family challenges or these kinds of things. Yes, ma'am?
I heard that you plan out your life with your angels. You bring up guides and elders, but you don't talk about angels?
It's a semantic question. You might say angels, guides. They're, beings of light, different kinds of beings of light.
So you're just all-encompassing.
Yeah, although let me make a distinction in my mind, a distinction between angels or angelic beings and guides or souls like us. I believe they're sort of different classes of beings, and the angelic beings do not incarnate as human beings. They don't do that. They're just not interested in that. They love us so much. They help us. They're all around us all the time, these beings of light, but they don't incarnate. But our spirit guides have incarnated, because how can they guide us if they haven't been there and done that? So they've been through it all. They know what it's like to be human. They know the challenges. They know what hunger's like, pain, this kind of thing. So we have a large team. We have spirit guides. We have these elders and friends, and we have angelic beings as well. Thank you. Yes, sir?
So, there's so many things one reads about violence of all kinds going on in the world.
Yes.
So let's say a person who's been, I fortunately have not, but let's say a person has been the victim of rape, or they had their legs blown off in the Boston Marathon, and then they meet the person who did that. So what? They're meeting this loving being suddenly?
You mean as a human or as a soul?
No, as a soul. So this is a...
So they've died?
Yes, everyone is...
Like someone has hurt someone else and then they both dead and then they meet.
Right.
What happens?
So what happens now? So one is an abuser or a perpetrator, one is a victim of the abuse. So what happens now? They're meeting each other as loving souls?
Yes, the abuser will say, well, was I cruel enough for you? And the soul will say, I think you overdid it a little bit. But yes, we make these agreements. I can see the perplexity on your face. Why would someone want to be molested as a child or something like that? But we go through these sessions and we find out why. There are reasons why. A lot of people choose to go through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering because they are on the healer track. They are wanting to become healers. Now, in order to become the most compassionate, empathic healer, you have to have suffered yourself. If you've suffered yourself, then you really know what it's like to help someone else who is suffering.
So let me ask you, one of the critiques I hear from some of my more traditional spiritual teachers, when they look at this kind of thinking is, well then, why bother making the world a better place? Why get involved? Leave everyone out to their agreements, and why would I, if I see a woman being raped, why should I get involved? Oh, that's their sole agreement. I'm just going to go on to Whole Foods now. They're having this whole agreement here.
Maybe that was an opportunity for you to be courageous.
Yes.
Maybe that was all set up for your benefit as you walked by. I mean, it's very complex. There's no easy answers here. If someone's giving you easy answers, I mean, that's up to you, but there's no easy answers in all this. It's so complicated. I can't figure it all out. All I can do is elicit as much information as I can for my clients. We'll give you an easy answer for that. How do I know what to do? Follow your heart. Just follow your heart. If you see someone being hurt and your heart tells you I need to help them, you need to go help them.
What would God do?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier very briefly about a dream, dreams. How common are dreams in communications between the spirit, your spiritual souls, and your living, your human body? Or how important or common are dream memories? See, I have a lot of dream memories that I can't connect.
Dreams are very complex, and there are very many different types of dreams. There are the dreams
I'm
of...
just saying, is it common?
Yes, sir. It's very common for souls or spirits to communicate with us through dreams. Yes, very common.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that every dream you have is a spirit communication, because we have different kinds of dreams. Those dreams where you're filing away information, these dreams where your own subconscious or higher self is trying to give you information. But yes, we do have dreams that are seeded from other realms. Yeah.
Think of somebody like Michael Landon that had so much to give, or maybe a mother who has young children. In other words, they're doing a wonderful thing here, and yet they leave. And from what I hear, Michael Landon had found somebody he really loved. Well, how are people reacting to the fact of leaving the people they love when they cross over? Or leaving something that maybe they
Their life
love to
seems
do?
Like their life, everything seems to be going great, and then they die, they get sick and die or something.
Well, or they leave somebody that needs them and that they love.
Well, that's a very deep question. The whys of why do we leave and why, when do we choose to leave? It's a very, very deep question. And it's very individual. I think for every person, it's different. Now, before we even incarnate, we tend to have these planning sessions, and we'll plan things out with these other souls and sort of say, I might be leaving a little early, this might be hard for you, but we're determining that this is going to be kind of what you need. You need to get a little more independence, or something like this as a soul. You need to stand up a little for yourself. So I'm going to be there for a while, but then I'm going to leave, and I know you're going to be okay. So we have these soul agreements, and in concert with our guides and those elders and people who help arrange all these lives. I mean, it's so complex. Can you imagine the threads of all this stuff, the time and people, and It's incredible, but we do all this planning, and we are definitely personally involved. So Michael Landon or whoever, you know, it wasn't a surprise. It might have been a surprise to him, to his conscious mind, but to his soul, he's like, yeah, I know I was going to leave. In fact, I can't believe I even stayed this long.
But they don't, the soul that's left, you're talking
The one left
about the
behind.
people behind. What about the soul that's left? Does he feel, I didn't
The one who
wanna
died, you
leave?
mean?
Yeah, the one who died. When he died.
As soon as he dies, he's like, yay, that's over with. Yeah, of course you still have hard bonds with those left behind, but you know you're going to see them. It's like, you know, in the blink of an eye, 30 years, I'm going to see that guy back in soul to soul, and that's like the blink of an eye in the spirit realm. But also, you can visit him every day. I mean, people have visitations all the time.
You can see them, but you can't hug them.
You can't hug them like flesh to flesh, but your energy can embrace them.
Oh, and does that feel as good?
Yes.
Even more powerful.
That was the sweetest thing.
I don't know how to answer that.
I can answer that because I've had the experience in a meditation after my father died, and I was just meditating in general, and he came to me, and it feels even better. Honestly, it feels even better. Yeah,
I mean, you won't
forgot.
feel it physically,
Yeah.
but inside of your soul and inside of your heart, I'm sure you'll feel that. If you're open to it, some people, they might be grieving so hard that they're sort of closed off. And this happens in sessions, when the person crosses over, and I'll say, are there any people left behind? And they go, yeah, my son, he's crying, I'm like, well, are you able to communicate with him? And he'll say, well, not now, because he's just too shook up. He can't listen, he's blocked. But when he goes to sleep tonight, I'm going to go into his dream, and I'm going to say, don't worry, it's okay, I'm fine, I'm happy. Or next week or whenever. So it's very different for everyone. But I think can I go back to the Life Between Lives process? Because I have a few more things to share.
Yes, and when you do, I do have one question.
Wait,
after.
let him finish.
I meant when he's ready. When he's ready.
I just want to, I'll just bring it home. I just want to say that the LBL experience and the message I bring to you today is of hope and of love, because through these sessions, we see the whole pageant of our soul, the whole, story of our soul across history. And it gives us hope about this life, knowing that this life is very, very precious. Every life is very precious. But it's just a drop in the ocean of your soul's evolution, of your soul's journey. It's just a drop in the ocean. It is very precious, and yet there's more. And also, love. Love. We have whatever religion you might adhere to, or no religion at all, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Wiccan. We all believe in the divine in some way, unless you're an atheist. We all believe in the divine and the emissaries of the divine, angels, guides. These beings are all around us now. We're surrounded by love. So, someone once said, ask and ye shall receive. If you just merely ask for guidance, for support, for love, there it is. It will come. Maybe even today. Okay, I'm done.